These images have created a storm on social media. Some marchers displayed the old apartheid flag as they took to the streets to denounce farm attacks. Protesters blocked some highways, while in Middelburg, Mpumalanga, a truck crashed into a convoy of protesters. For some, this was a day to remember the loved ones who have died. The Black Monday demonstrations aim to highlight attacks on farmers and farm workers. Agri-SA claims it's more dangerous to be a farmer in South Africa than anywhere else in the world. But a crime expert cautions against using a day like this to divide the nation.
Crime in general in South Africa is a huge problem. I think the biggest concern is the rise in violent crime over the last 4 or 5 years. We've seen a consistent increase in it. We need to look at whether we are polarizing ourselves from the community against the police or from the police against the community, etc.
A recent UNISA study found most attacks are purely criminal. Only a few stem from labor disputes.
About only 5% of the so-called farm attacks, it was because of revenge. In other words, a dispute between the farmer and one of the workers. It was mostly driven by greed.
Agri-SA says security is a priority.
We also have an Agri-Securitas Trust Fund where we help farmers with equipment and with radios and with drone technology, etc., to actually keep them safe.
Experts say police need to prioritize farm attacks, focusing on farm workers as well. Cooperation is needed to ensure this all-important sector is not at risk. After all, it's said one commercial farmer feeds over 3,000 people. Khalihle Khumalo, Pretoria.
Thanks for staying with us right here on Sunrise. As you see, seen on that report now, images of South African protesters carrying the Apartheid-era flag and it being displayed as logos on clothing sparked outrage on social media this past week. Now, the Black Monday protest, which was organized to raise awareness about the alleged rise in farm murders in South Africa, quickly lost focus and became a highly offensive to some citizens. Now, comparisons have been drawn between the orange, white and blue flag and the Nazi flag, and there have been calls that displaying it should be made illegal. Joining us this morning to deliberate further on this matter, we're joined by Jonas Sibanyoni from the Human Rights Commission and Professor David Copland from the University of Witwatersrand, as well as the Deputy Director General at the Department of Arts and Culture. Heritage promotion and preservation is what he looks at. Now, remember, you can be part of our conversation by sharing your thoughts with us this morning on our Facebook and Twitter pages, and we'll be looking at those comments and taking your calls as well on 01144711742 or 1620. Good morning to you, gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us, and also good morning to your listeners. Okay,
so maybe we should start our conversation with the Department of Arts and Culture and sort of like getting an understanding of like incidents of what happened this past week. How have they heightened our emotions in South Africa, and around issues of social cohesion? How should what have happened on Monday been tackled?
Maybe let me just start by saying that we need to understand what the flag, the current flag, represents in South Africa. It represents the break with the past, break with the apartheid past and colonial past. In fact, it was designed to ensure that we reimagine and reimage a new society.
This is the new flag.
That's the new flag, a society which is non-racial, non-sexist, and non-creedal, and a society that is attempting to bridge the gaps between black and white people.
But what does the old flag represent?
Of course, the old flag, if you would know, it was very exclusivist. It was more about, white supremacy. And the new flag came into existence to actually undo that, so that we build a new society, equal society, united society. It was about unity. So the use of an old flag is not something that can be supported. It's not acceptable at all, because it is actually saying there are still people who are still nostalgic about the past. The very same ugly past that actually adversely affected the majority of people in this country.
Okay. Now, Professor Copeland, let's talk about what this display of the flag represents in terms of like a consciousness that it puts out there, you know, to us as South Africans.
Yes, I think we have to be thoughtful about it, and it's part of my job to be thoughtful about symbols, but it's really not so much a flag of, to the people who might like to wave it occasionally, so much a flag of apartheid or white supremacy, so much as Afrikaans nationalism, the Afrikaans people as a separate people and as a nation. And if you go through the history of the flag, back to 1928, you can see that the battle of symbols is against the British. Nothing to do with the majority of the people in the country who weren't seen as having any flag in particular. Trying to push the Union Jack and the other symbols of the British Empire kind of out of the flag, or to reduce them, and to keep the memory of the old Transvaal and the Free State Republic and so on.
But the brandishing of it on Monday, yeah. what did it speak to in terms of the psyche of I guess maybe those people who are marching? What does it say?
To me, it's that the Afrikaans-speaking community feels very, very much under siege and under pressure, and in particular, it was no accident that the two sentences, jail sentences for the two farmers who were convicted for the racist institute with the coffin and so on, that raised a lot of hackles in the country, came just before the march. So in a sense, it's about farm murders, a very legitimate concern. You kill farmers, you kill our food, and you also, you know, you are attacking a kind of productive community there, but also the sentence is coming so hard upon it. A feeling of being pushed, if you will, to the limit, which is not to talk about excusing the whole thing or whatever, but sometimes it's better as South Africans to understand what's bothering the rest of us before the waterfall of condemnation drowns out all voices.
Okay. All right. So then let's look at it from a view of the Human Rights Commission. What's the response to what happened on Monday with the flag and the singing of the old national anthem, and the conversation that the country should be having coming out of that?
Well, from the side of the South African Human Rights Commission, people have been complaining to say, is it lawful? Is it correct to fly the old South African flag? Some refer to it as the apartheid flag, because it represents a regime or a government that was exclusive, and then a government that had a policy that was called apartheid or separate development, which was declared a crime against humanity. And then people are surprised to say South Africa hasn't followed the examples of countries like Germany, where people can't fly the Nazi flag. It is criminal. It is an offense if you do that in Germany.
But it's not necessarily the case in South Africa currently.
In South Africa, it's not the case. And, you know, let me explain to say, before a legislation is passed, there must be a mischief. And then this flying of the flag, because it's becoming frequent, it becomes now a mischief. And I will say, as the Human Rights Commission, we are deliberating to say, isn't it time that we have to maybe approach the legislature, the lawgiver, to say, come with a bill and let be there some public participation, so that the South African communities or the Society of South Africa should participate and say, is it correct for some people at some quarters to fly the old South African flag? So
now, before we went to the break, we were talking about whether should this flag be banned, and we also made reference to how you know, there was a comparison between the South African old flag and the Nazi flag. And Professor David, you made a very interesting analysis, and you said actually we shouldn't be comparing it to the to the Nazi flag, but instead the American Confederate flag. Just take us through why you say that.
Well, because American situation, which had a lot to do with racism and slavery and issues that occupy us, was a flag of rebellion, sedition, and drawing back from a national unity. And the old South African flag has many of those qualities or meanings attached to it. Don't really wish to be part of this new free democratic dispensation, preferred an older regime in which that kind of social suppression and oppression is championed, and they fought to maintain that, as happened in the case of the Second Anglo-Boer War, and also, generally speaking, in Afrikaans nationalist struggles. So,
but is it a representation of the entire Afrikaans population, or just a select few who feel that way?
Well, it's just those who feel that way. Nevertheless, it is a symbol with a very broad reach, and it's been pointed out, it has a completely negative connotations. It symbolizes everything we fought against, and is a very much, you know, we used to see that as a symbol of the nation in the old days. We thought, this is not our nation, this flag. So even today there are those few who would prefer to go back to what the nation was at the time. Of course, there are few, but currently their feeling of isolation and being pushed out or pushed back because of farm murders, because of these, you know, legal issues, it does give some of them a feeling that, you know, we can't be here under this
this new flag.
thing. Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's take a call.